Welcome to In the Zone, National Flood Experts Project Spotlight Series. I'm DJ McClure, our director here. Today I'm with Sant Sobhraj of Stateline Mini Storage. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being with us today. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company for a moment?
Sure. The company in question here is Stateline Mini Storage. It's a small self-storage facility in the Corning MSA of New York. It's about 16,000 square feet, maybe 122 units or so. This is one of a few storage properties that I own. I've just gotten into storage maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. Buy mostly in the East Coast, but this is my second one in New York. And yeah, you guys were a big help on this one, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, storage has been really picking up a lot of momentum. We see it down here in Florida pretty heavily as well.
Yeah, I own a property in Florida. Yes, it's one of the nation's biggest asset classes right now. Absolutely.
So I understand that our associates met each other. You found us on a podcast. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. I think it was a Realty Experts or Realty Tipster podcast, something along those lines. If you want to dive into the history, basically, to make a long story short, is this exact property that we are talking about right now. I found out very late in the transaction that it was in a flood zone. The bank ran a flood search, maybe about, I don't know, according to them, it was the last thing on their checklist, but it was about 2 to 3 weeks before scheduled closing. And it's, hey, you're in a flood zone. And, the premiums aren't going to be that bad. And then I start gathering premiums. I'm like, no, this is significant. This is $9,000 a year that, wasn't expected. So my first thought was to, end the transaction and just cut my losses. But I started searching one night just for anybody who's in this situation, and I came across this podcast. You guys did an interview on the podcast, and I listened to it in full length. It was like a 60-minute, audio clip. We'll go with, and it looked like this was perfect for my situation. So then I contacted you the next day. I believe Barrett was my point of contact. He got back to me, and we took it from there. He said, "Hey, your timing couldn't be more perfect. We're going to be in your area and this week, in the next 3 days. If you want, we could do an engineering survey or a field study of the property, and we'd know with 100% certainty if we can help you or not."
Yeah, we come across this scenario quite often, especially if the seller didn't have any debt on the property. And then when you're looking at the T12, you wouldn't even see a flood insurance expense listed on there. So a lot of times it's in that 11th hour before closing. We get a lot of calls like yours in that same situation. So yeah, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. And so, yeah, we did the flood expert survey, as we call it, sending one of our engineers to the property. So how would you describe the process, or the experience rather, kind of going through it with Barrett and our team?
Barrett was phenomenal. You guys have a great associate there. I couldn't have asked for more from him. Communication was perfect. It was flawlessly, to be honest with you. Went through, the timing was impeccable, and he had somebody out there within 2 or 3 days. There was associated costs with it, which I talked to the seller and I said, "Hey, listen, we could either end the transaction now, or we could go through this minor expense. It's a study. It wasn't very expensive, and they would let us know for sure you could help." And the seller was on board. We split that expense. Within 2 days, you guys were out there. You did the study, and then 2 days later, Barrett came back to me and said, "Hey, we got great news. We will definitely be able to help you." And then you guys took it from there. Oh, and everything, the actual process of getting the buildings removed from, there were 6 buildings, to get them removed from the flood zone, you guys onboarded that expense in-house, or that process in-house, and I wasn't billed until you guys were successful. That was one of the stipulations of the contract. So I was really happy about that, because I'd hate to go through the whole thing and then it's like, "Oh, sorry, Sant, I know we said 99% chance, but there was that 1%, and we still have to bill you, this large amount of money." So that was great.
Yeah, the contingency is something we're really, proud to offer on these projects, just in doing such a high volume, knowing the outcomes is an important part of when someone like yourself is going through it for the first time.
Yeah.
So what type of impact has this had on the project? Now since you're post-closing into the deal, how would you describe that?
It's been really, really helpful. I was able to cancel the flood policy that was in place. The bank no longer mandates it. I did get my good portion of the premiums that I had to put forward because I had to move towards closing with the expectation that we were going to be successful. So I did close on the property, and it was all understood on my behalf. I understood the risks I was taking. So I closed on the property, and then it wasn't for about maybe 3 or 4 weeks that you contacted me. Barrett contacted me and said, "Sant, everything is finalized. You can go ahead and cancel everything, get the cancellation process started with your insurer and with the bank to make sure it's not mandated." That took maybe about 3 weeks or so of back and forth communication between the bank and the insurer, or really the bank's counsel. I think back on it, the bank's counsel and the insurer. But in the end, it was all concluded and everything worked out great.
Fantastic. Would you say that now, having gone through this process and now you're educated on, the capabilities that exist within the flood zone, would you say this has changed your underwriting or your acquisition strategy in any way?
It has, absolutely. Yeah. Usually I would discount properties in flood zones. Well, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. Questionable flood zones that I will now consider. Like obviously there's just some areas that they're prone to flooding, and there's not really much from a reporting standpoint that can be done to remove them from flood zones. For example, parts of Louisiana right by the water. It's just that it is what it is. You're never going to get that removed from a flood zone. But like there's areas in upstate New York that are near creeks and maybe rivers that are in flood zones, and I would definitely consider those going forward.
Yeah, for a lot of our partners, they definitely add this as a item during their due diligence, because a lot of times if you find out that early in the process, it's even more time to be able to get this done pre-closing, to avoid having to even take that cost on at closing as a whole.
Yeah, great point. And that's what Barrett also pointed out to me. He said, listen, if you're ever looking at properties that are kind of even in the gray area, just run them by me first, and I'll do the search on my end just to, and early on, so you're not stuck in this situation again. So that obviously opened my eyes, and that's, I'm constantly underwriting storage properties. So yeah, that's definitely a step I'll take going forward.
Absolutely. Well, just to finish, what advice would you offer to other investors that might be facing a similar situation with the property in a flood zone?
Contact you guys. Absolutely. Yeah. This experience opened my eyes tremendously, and it's a step I will take going forward. So that'd be my advice to all investors that are looking at properties in flood zones. It should be an arsenal in your queue.
Well, we appreciate the partnership and look forward to working together in the future.
Absolutely. Same here.